Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night and you know what to do. It's the place where you can be as judgmental as you want because nobody's going to be caring about it. That's what we do. We're going to look at all the ridiculous things that have happened in the past 7 days and we're going to bring you the winner before 8 o'clock tonight, of course. We've got a fantastic panel tonight. Isabel Oakeshott is here. TalkTV's international editor Richard Tice is here, Mr. International. Amanda Devlin from the Sun Showbiz Department, very important department this week. And Will Geddes, internationalist and security expert for the Stars. Here's what they're playing for. It is, of course, the Plank of the Week. And I think we should get straight to it. Isabel Oakeshott, we may already have the winner. We might have to just finish it with this. Who's your first nomination?
I mean, I obviously got my nomination in before everybody else. It's got to be Phil Schofield.
It's got to be.
It has to be.
Pip, as he likes to be called.
Pip, yeah. Pip Squeak.
Yes.
I mean, where do you begin with what has happened? Where do you begin? I mean, his protestations, for a start. You know, the guy... There is no defence left for him, and yet he's still trying to come out with things that act as if he's somehow slightly hard done by.
People have grudges against him.
And what I find bewildering is for somebody who has been in television, in media for so long, how did he think that he could get away with this forever? It was obvious that at some point it was going to come out, and he's completely mismanaged his own reputation, sold all his viewers a lie, never mind his own family. And now he's just... I mean, I think it's over for him.
Yeah, I think it is over for him. And, of course, one of the things that he did say was that he had lied repeatedly. Last week, we gave Plank of the Week to ITV because they seem to have mismanaged the whole thing so badly because, you know, a lot of people thought he should have gone at the beginning of last week. But, in fact, he kind of was struggling on and nobody quite knew whether he was going to come back or what they were going to do with him. And it seemed to me that ITV were just mismanaging the whole thing, which they kind of still are, really. But now we've got a guy who has admitted to lying to his own lawyer, to his wife, to his agent, to the Daily Mail, to ITV. I mean, it's extraordinary.
And you wonder what else hasn't come out yet.
Well, it's a day-by-day existence, isn't it? Because with every day that passes, something else comes out.
The other thing that I think although there's plenty of comment about it, I still think he's got away so far quite lightly with, is the disgusting age gap between him and the young man that he was, he now admits he was in a relationship with. I mean, I just find it impossible to believe that a woman would ever have got away with what he's done. Yeah. What is that?
And it would seem as though
not
many other people at ITV would have got away with it either, because the story would appear to be that Philip Schofield got away with an awful lot of things, and he was treated differently to other people.
Yeah.
How did one man have such a hold over this huge organisation that's got such a history and reputation? I mean, it beggars belief. I come of it from sort of the corporate
sense,
I mean, it's just unbelievable. You know, I've run a big multinational business listed on the stock market. There's no way that the non-execs should allow the chief exec to preside over this complete catastrophe that's not only destroying Philip Schofield's reputation, but it's actually massively damaging the brand of a major stock market listed company that's known all over the world.
Right. Exactly right. It's extraordinary. We've got a few clips to play you on this story, as you might imagine. Let's start with Philip Schofield. Back in February, I think it was 2020, when he came out as gay. This is him telling Holly Willoughby about his relationship with his wife.
You've been very open and honest with Steph all the way through this.
Yeah, I have no secrets. We've never had any secrets.
Apparently they did have secrets.
Yeah, I think there were quite a few secrets. And I think that we've got to start off from a place of that. I really do hope that his wife's doing okay, and the guy in question, the young boy who had an affair with Phil, because this is a huge scandal. It's like one of the biggest showbiz stories that there's been for a long time.
It's the greatest soap opera that ITV have ever produced, isn't it? I mean, it's far better than anything they've ever written. It's
their other output,
But there are some normal people involved who aren't in that world, and that's what's quite upsetting.
Yes.
They're having to deal with their lives being turned upside down, when there's been obviously this huge imbalance in power going on at ITV that was allowed to go on for so long. Yeah. And you do kind of wonder why Philip himself hung on as well. You're right, that the fact that he was still there being paid so much money. He could have gone on his own terms, gone in a really good way, and maybe this wouldn't have come out. It's been like the greed to sort of keep hanging on.
But that's the trouble, isn't it, with these kinds of stories, that the
Yeah.
people in the middle of them don't see what other people see at the end of the day.
And then this alleged 6-figure sum payoff, which I think we're going to need to know more about that.
Yeah.
Who paid for that? Who authorised it?
That could be coming out
was it
now
for?
as we're on
Exactly.
air.
What was it for? I
Yeah.
mean, it just somebody who's been in the job that long. It wasn't a life career, was it?
Yeah.
For this young man.
No.
It's hard to see how that payoff could possibly have been proportionate to being made redundant.
And as
It doesn't
Richard
stack
says,
up.
you know, there's surely a duty of care to the shareholders, to the board. You know, financially, there's a duty of care, is there not, for a company that big and that public?
It's remarkable. Carolyn McCall has been running this company since January 18. The share price has collapsed by 60%. The dividend has collapsed by almost 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, in any normal situation, it's a catastrophe. She should have been fired beforehand.
Yeah.
Why they've remained utterly silent through this process at the board level just beggars complete financial negligence.
Just before I come to you, Will, let's have a look at another clip. This is PHILLIP Schofield in that same interview with Holly Willoughby, saying that the reason he came out was nothing to do with anything other than him just wanting to.
This is your decision.
This is
that
my
you've made.
decision. This is absolutely my decision. It was something I knew that I had to do.
It's just all so fake, isn't it? And I think
well, now that you see it back, you just go, really?
And that's what's going to kill the show. If the show doesn't survive, it will be because I think millions of viewers just feel duped. They were sold a complete lie.
I think one of the things which is quite evident, obviously, with a lot of the disclosures which are coming out is that he's controlled the narrative around himself so well, and he's made himself so robust. And as you can imagine, in my world, you know, I know some of the paparazzi, and quite often you have a love-hate relationship with them. And I remember a good friend of mine telling me a good story about that they got imagery of him in his back garden with his grey hair before it was known that he actually was pretty much entirely grey. And they were about to sell the pictures, and he very quickly preempted the papers by telling everybody that he was naturally grey.
Right.
So, you know, he's very, very controlling. But I think one of the nice things, I mean, you mentioned about duty of care, Richard. I think one of the things which I think is really good is the fact that inevitably, in any kind of explosion of a crisis of this type, is that members of staff, people who'd been subjugated or suppressed and bullied within their processes, and from what I hear, you know, I was on the show a few times, I didn't have a bad experience myself, but a lot of those staff members, a lot of the runners, a lot of the producers were treated really badly. They're now breaking cover. So, you know, he hasn't been able to control this narrative.
No.
This is not going to go well for him for a long time.
This is it. And the toxic sort of atmosphere has been talked about now by an awful lot of people, including Dr. Ranj Singh. Also...
That was a nail in the coffin, I felt.
And also, of
that
course,
was
next
shocking.
week, the chief exec, we think, and certainly some of the senior executives will be called before the House of Commons Committee on media to answer. Not because they were summoned for that, but there happens to be a meeting which they're going to be at, which they're probably going to be asked. But luckily, we know that there isn't actually a toxic atmosphere there, because Giles Brandreth says it's really a nice place to work.
Well, if Giles says it must be true.
Yeah.
We are very happy to be here. Can I say that as well?
Yeah, of course.
This is a happy place to work. I enjoy coming in here, and have done since I began coming in. That's nice.
Who's behind that sofa?
OK, Giles.
That has to be one of the cringiest, most ridiculous pieces of TV that's ever been shown on air.
He needs a job, though. He wants to be on the
But
He should be fired. I mean, that's
We're
just
not gonna get on
ridiculous.
this
They're
morning
all
after
paid
this.
quite
We're
well
done.
to be there, right? So I'm presuming that they've got some vested interest in
Right,
saying
this
it's
is
a
why
great
they're very
place to
happy
work.
to
They're not
be
going to sit
there.
there and go, actually, it's awful. I hate coming in here.
bit rubbish.
It's an absolute nightmare. You know, I
But
wish you
even
would-
that, it was
wish
so
you wouldn't keep
embarrassing.
asking me.
It was embarrassing, wasn't it, that whole thing of
It
them
really
just
is.
carrying on. It should have been taken off air until things were investigated, until it was clear what was going on, so that the viewers weren't tuning in to knowing that they were being lied to, it being fake. It ruined its own reputation of the show, and that's why it's impossible to actually see how in the future it can go on.
Yeah.
There's always that risk, though, when you take a show off, and it's how long you have to put it in that stasis of, you know, hibernation, and whether you can actually bring it back from that and resurrect it.
I don't think
I mean,
we can.
I think we're in safe hands. Apparently, Peter Andre's hosting next week. So.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
there
all
you
right
go. Excellent. Richard, who's your first nominee?
Well, KEIR Starmer.
Sir Keir.
Oh, wow.
I actually struck Sir KEIR Starmer. I mean, he came out this week with another brilliant masterpiece of a plan, suggesting that he's going to stop granting any new licences for oil and gas across the whole of the United Kingdom. Just to remind people, this is probably one of our most successful industries in the last 60 years across the UK that has driven prosperity, jobs, growth, wealth, particularly in parts of Scotland around Aberdeen, which is now a global epicentre of knowledge in the energy industry. And he thinks it's a bright idea to scrap the lot.
Kill it all off.
To kill it all off with all the jobs and everything that would disappear. And the impact of this, whenever there's a general election, he may or may not be Prime Minister, but the odds are that he might be. But the fact is, it literally kills off investment from now, from this week. People are going to say, this is not a basket case. They don't know what they're doing. And what he's not answered is, so what happens when he wants to become a superpower of green renewables? You're not very powerful when the wind doesn't blow.
Isn't this a bit like what they did in Venezuela? When they took control of the oil and gas business and basically told all the American oil companies that they were now owned by Venezuela.
Yeah.
And that didn't go too well, as far as I remember.
Absolutely right. Venezuela is still one of the greatest resources of oil and gas.
Right.
And it's one of the poorest countries in the world. I mean, it's just mind-boggling how stupid this bloke is and how he doesn't understand. There are 23 million boilers in this country that need a thing called gas.
Yeah.
And if you don't use our own gas...
You're supposed to get rid of yours, aren't you? You're supposed to get a heat pump now.
But I think they've now admitted that those don't work.
They've admitted those don't work. Even this week,
warm.
there's a rebellion amongst voters in Germany because they've realised heat pumps are useless. They call them hammers over there. You might need a hammer to make it work. But anyway, the reality is, if we can't use our own gas, we've got to bring it in from somewhere else, like Russia or America. That's a good idea. So let's send all our jobs and money that way or that way. It means we're going to get poorer.
But the good news is, like, we've got, I think we have a clip of Sir Keir Starmer explaining his strategy
brilliant.
to the good people at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Here we go.
There's huge potential for this in the UK in terms of wind and offshore wind. We're already developing that at speed. We need onshore wind to go with it so that we have a combination that, as I say, brings the prices down.
I mean, that's it in a nutshell, right? That sounds great. Well done, Keir.
That's the greatest windbag we've ever seen at the World Economic Forum.
I thought the whole thing about wind farms had already been seen as a fallacy, that they actually don't produce pretty much any kind of power whatsoever.
People talk about it, though, as if they have a knowledge about what they're saying.
It's quite obvious he has no knowledge.
He has no knowledge.
But let's just remind ourselves, wind is not exactly a new technology. We're going back to technology before the Industrial Revolution. Hardly progress, folks.
It really isn't.
Maybe he needs to get sent a copy of Margaret Thatcher's memoirs about the miners' strikes. So
it's a bit like saying, let's do away with all diesel and petrol cars. Oh, they're doing that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to happen either, is it? Absolutely ridiculous. While we're on the subject of the Labour Party, though, I'm just going to be slightly onanistic here and put before you a clip of myself talking to Charlotte Nichols MP for Warrington, who was stupid enough to come on my show this week. I thought about making a plank of the week, but in fact, she's already done it herself, so she sort of superseded it. But here she is. She basically said that she hated Tories and she was very much in favour of abusing them at all times, despite the fact that she's been running her own campaign to stop online abuse. Here she is.
Oh, brilliant.
They would be doing it with or without my
No, but you're endorsing it, though, and you're a democratically elected MP for the Labour Party. I mean, has the Labour Party said anything to you about it?
No, of course not.
So they're endorsing you, saying hating the Tories is a good thing. Her explanation was that everybody hates the Tories, so it's OK. I pointed out that 40% of the people in her constituency actually voted Tory. Not quite true to say that, but extraordinary. Anyway, Amanda, who's
yours?
yours?
The fact that she didn't actually sort of...
She didn't bat an eyelid,
She didn't seem to get why she was on the show.
I don't think she knows what a hypocrite
is.
But she is the absolute definition of it. Anyway, but who's your nomination?
So, God, it's a hard act to follow so far, but I'm going to go for Mizzy, who is a TikTok influencer.
Ghastly individual.
He was on the Piers Morgan show last week and he'd been arrested. He then broke his conditions for bail by posting more videos.
Because he was told not to post any more videos. This is the guy
they're all pranks. So they're all
pranks, but they're not really.
No, they're actually quite scary. I think that's the thing that's horrible about it, is that they're all pranks, but they're scaring people in that moment. So there's an old woman who her dog was snatched away.
This is him getting arrested for the second time. But carry on.
Yeah, there he is. But this is the thing, he loves this. He is happy to be being filmed, being arrested. That's not stopping him. If anything, it's encouraging him for more publicity. And that's why, because it was a criminal behaviour order that he had breached. So I don't know how long he's actually facing. He was in prison for 3 nights and then got bail.
And didn't he just get fined like £365?
Yes, yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Some of the things he was doing, like stealing
they're actually really horrible.
Just not very nice.
There was a train that he was fiddling with. He snuck in.
Here he is getting on the train, and he sort of goes into
the announcing machine
yes,
or something.
Yeah.
The tannoy.
Yeah.
And he was in there like...
I like the announcing machine better.
Announcing machine.
The announcing machine. Everyone needs one of those.
Does what it says on the tin.
I think you have one every day. It's called your mouth.
Exactly right.
I mean,
he is the sort of, when you think about what social media has provided us with.
Is this
is like the worst.
It's like the decline and fall of civilization, really, isn't it?
The fact is, he's an 18-year-old man.
Undermine your nomination here because I actually think Plank's too nice for him.
Yes.
I mean, this guy's a scumbag. He is a nasty piece of work. I think stealing old ladies' dogs. Yeah. Sorry, but we shouldn't be celebrating that, and Plankery is too good for it.
Yeah, I agree.
I seriously think the court's really misjudged this one in terms of the £350 fine.
Yeah.
Plus the criminal behaviour order, which is basically an updated ASBO, which means nothing. He breached it on the first day, both by going to Westfield and also posting stuff online, which was very, very clear as to what he could and couldn't do. And he said to the court when he reappeared, he said, no one gave me a map of Westfield to where I could or couldn't.
Right, well, we'll give you a map to the prison.
He's an 18-year-old man with
that?
a child.
I think we can give him a prison.
He's not a 14-year-old who could be excused for ignorance.
And people like that, if he's not willing to live by the rules of society, then just lock him up.
Just lock him up for a very long time and set a very clear deterrent.
Until you learn your lesson.
There has to be a broken windows policy here.
I agree.
Look, if you're not going to play by the rules, then you actually don't deserve to enjoy a free society. Lock you up, throw away the key, and everybody knows where they stand.
Yeah. The real worry with people like that is that there will be a lot of others who will think this is funny, impressive.
Yeah.
I guess he's
sure there's loads of copycat
he's probably making a lot of money
that's
out
what's
of
really dangerous.
all the hits.
The reason I wanted to bring it up today is because I want it to be that we're sort of shaming him and shaming also the people that are in charge of getting rid of him, putting him behind bars, because
also,
a CBO isn't enough,
where is the TikTok police, if you like, banning him from TikTok? Because he shouldn't be making money out of it. And if he is making money out of it,
give it back.
That should be seized,
he'll be making them money. TikTok money.
Yeah, but this is the point. TikTok surely bears some
followers.
responsibility here.
Absolutely.
TikTok you can't make money from crime, so how is he possibly doing that?
Exactly right. TikTok banned me for inciting violence because I wanted to... Yeah, because I said we shouldn't be teaching gender questioning in schools. I got banned by TikTok.
Blimey.
So, I mean, they should be banning this player.
Well,
how dare you, Richard?
That is mad, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. Will, time for your first one.
Well, for...
This is great, by the way. We've already got 3 winners.
Well, I think I have it in the bag, Mike. I again, not wishing to sound like a Stark record, and very pleased to be that Stark record. It's our good friends Just Stop Oil. Yet again, who seem to have a completely spontaneous, sporadic and unpredictable strategy of disrupting whatever they feel is necessary or the flavour of that week, whether it be Twickenham last weekend in the rugby, which I really did appreciate the very high tackle by one of the stewards on one of the protesters. I thought it could have gone a little harder even. I thought he was a little gentle. But whether it be Twickenham, whether it be the Crucible, or this month-long of slow marches that they're doing, the one thing that reassures me is that the police are taking the public order offences a bit more seriously. And apparently this morning in Hammersmith, they started pushing them out of the way when they're delaying traffic. But these eco-clowns are just more of a nuisance, attention-seeking. And if anything, I would love to see some kind of sensible survey to see how many people have increased their support.
Well, if the police start arresting them and people start doing the kinds of things that they have been doing, which is driving around them, driving through them, let's have a look at this particular example. This is a guy in a van who clearly just had enough and took evasive action to get around them.
It's going to hurt someone.
Yeah. But there was another guy this week who just drove sort of slowly through them. Just told to get out of the way. Because technically, they're now kind of you're not just holding up traffic, they are just enraging people.
Yeah.
And it's going to end in some kind of problematic situation.
Oh, it's going to end badly.
Yeah,
This is going to end very badly.
Surely now the police must act because, technically speaking, they are causing what could be described as a potential breach of the peace.
Well, the laws have been improved, and they were improved just prior to the coronation of King Charles. But what I think is also astounding is the fact that Keir Starmer, if he has any chances of winning a general election next year, if apparently, as the whispers are, Stop Oil are now actually aligning themselves to Keir Starmer.
Well, what's happening is he's taking money from Dale Vince.
Correct.
He's also bankrolling Just Stop Oil. In fact, he said just this week that in the next 48-hour period, anybody who donates to Just Stop Oil, he will double the donation.
So
surely he's encouraging analysis.
That has happened, and I think he probably may be deserving of a Plank Award himself.
I think he may well get one very soon.
Extra.
Have you got any spare planks? I mean, there's a lot of planks out there this week.
We've also even started annoying the cyclists. Have a look at this.
Oh, yeah.
You feel better, but you're hurting the cause. You're hurting the green cause. So you feel good about yourself, but you're not helping.
Mike, that's actually the first time I'm ever going to agree with a cyclist.
Yeah.
But
he's one of the good ones. He didn't have the camera on the top, so he's obviously not an extremist cyclist.
I'm surprised it wasn't Jeremy Vine. But, the one thing the one thing that really disgusted me was at the Chelsea Flower Show.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
I mean, what are you throwing stuff around in a garden for? Apparently, there wasn't any food there. Never mind. Coming up, the next bit of entertainment for you. The Prime Minister's in there. So is another minister as well, and also those anti-trans protesters. Trans protesters. I can't remember which way around it is. Anyway, it's all coming up on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're well underway, and I must say we've already got 4 pretty good contenders, but it's time for me to give you my first nomination. And as I was saying, I'm not quite sure whether they're pro-trans, anti-trans, trans plus, trans minus, trans. It's very confusing, this whole trans debate, isn't it? Because when people say to me, well, that's a trans woman, I always go, well, is that woman...
Does that mean they started as a man,
or is it a man, woman?
I think it's a man that started as a... Yeah,
it
was a man and it...
Right. Anyway, there was a big row in Oxford this week, Oxford Union, because Kathleen Stock wanted to go up. She's a woman who lost her job, I think, University of Sussex ages ago because she wasn't trans enough. And when she went up to speak at Oxford Union, of course, people were very upset about it because they thought that they might... be able to, they might not be able to listen to what she had to say because it might harm them. And so there was a demonstration, and this woman, POSSNETT, who I think has been on Piers Morgan's show before,
with you.
who's a pro-trans person. She's got a T-shirt on that says something about stop killing trans children or something like that.
I don't think trans children have been killed.
Well, this is one of the things they do.
It's a fiction, isn't it?
They conflate these kind of figures of violence against trans people from other countries in the world where lots of people get hurt and then say this is an anti-trans thing. Anyway, basically, she said that this kind of language was ridiculous, and her father apparently is in Extinction Rebellion, so you can imagine Sunday lunch around their gaff. That roast all round, I suspect.
I don't think we'd be invited, would we?
No,
I don't think we would.
But it has become this whole trans thing. I mean, we had a figure this week of the number of people who had actually sought to change their gender. It's 800. That's it.
I know, but that was in 1 year.
In 1 year.
But that was double the previous year.
Yeah. So everyone's going, oh, well, you see, it's exponentially growing. And you go, well, what do you mean? You think, in about 10 years, it'll be 4 million?
It's still much more of a thing. So I used to dismiss it as just hardly anything. It's dominating completely disproportionately. There are a lot of these people around, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but that is a much bigger contingent than I think most of us imagine.
I think there's more people who talk about it than actually want to transition.
I think
because
that's
what it is it's the people who are kind of against those who think.
And society is enabling it,
yes,
which
it
I
is.
don't think is I don't think is healthy.
No, I don't think so. We've got it's become a bit of a trendy thing to be associated with. Let's have a look at one of the protesters outside, whose name is Damaris Stewart, I think.
It may not be explicitly transphobic, or you may be able to say, oh, I'm not transphobic, but ultimately you're promoting an attitude towards people, and also generalising behaviour that should not be generalised.
Generalising behaviour that should not be generalised.
What does that mean?
I have no idea.
I was going to ask for a translation.
I should add that Riz POSSNETT has done what, of course, all good demonstrators now do. She glued herself to the floor. I don't know if she's still there. You might still be there, just sort of walk around her. But funnily enough, I mean, what people said who actually listened, because they ended up kicking the trans demonstrators out, and they actually had the talk from Kathleen Stock, and quite a lot of the questions that she got asked were sort of anti her views.
Right.
And a lot of the people who were there said that was actually quite helpful because, you know, we had a conversation, we had a debate, which is becoming less and less possible to do.
It's the point, you know, being at the Oxford Union.
It is absolutely ludicrous.
I do like the German police's approach to protesters that glue themselves to the road. Have you seen that?
Yeah, they just sort of pull
where they literally just pull their hands straight off the concrete.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But there is this kind of, as I say, she went to a school, I think, that cost £41,000 a year.
Right.
Her father's obviously quite wealthy, in Extinction Rebellion. These are the people that are sort of holding the country to ransom, you know, like all these Just Stop Oil people.
No.
You know, they're all middle class, they're all white. I don't care what colour they are, but, you know, if anybody else was making a remark about an organisation or anybody demonstrating, they'd say that.
Yeah.
And they're all impossibly well off.
And absolute compulsive attention
Yeah.
seekers.
Yeah.
I mean, none of this is achieving anything other than drawing attention to their own idiocy.
But it's far wider reach now. I mean, Just Stop Oil, for example, in April cost the Metropolitan Police £3.5 million to police their various protests.
They might as well not bother, mind you.
And I think between October and December it was £7.5 million. So, I mean, they're costing us, the taxpayer, a heck of a lot of money.
That's how much it costs just to stand around.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Not
and do nothing.
Away,
do nothing. Yeah.
How many people have actually got a job and actually contribute to society and
pay
contribute
some tax
to our economy and pay some tax and do something useful? Because what they're doing is utterly useless. It's destructive to society. I think it's damaging to children. I think all of this stuff, it is sending us into a very weak, feeble, pathetic place. And we've got to stand up and stand against it.
Well, look at
it's not
how
what,
big
it's
it's
not
gonna
what
be.
the vast majority of this country want.
But it will be a big issue in the election because people who are living in parts of Britain which are not London and not Oxford are probably going to go, well, we don't really care. They'll be like us saying, well, what's pro-trans, anti-trans, trans man?
Getting bewildered that no one can define what a woman is.
Exactly. Can't we talk about the cost of living? Can't we talk about the cost of electricity?
Yeah.
You know, why I can't park my car outside my house because, you know, you've just put a load of lines down that I can't park it there anymore. Anyway, Isabel, you're next.
I am next with someone that probably few people have actually heard of. Because he's so effective that he has basically no public profile at all. Now, this is one Robert Jenrick, who is a Conservative immigration minister.
He's been a lot of things, hasn't he?
And this week, young Jenrick has been globetrotting. He is on a tour of North Africa, bits of the Mediterranean, and he's gone there to basically try to solve global migration.
Yes.
One guy... and there he is, surveying.
I'm going to fix that.
Look,
from the penthouse of his hotel.
Yeah.
Surveying a whole
nothing to
continent.
declare this way.
I mean, the Tories. I am so sick, and I'm sure all our viewers are absolutely sick of hearing the Tories saying that they are determined to stop the boats. That is no good to me. It is no good to anyone. I don't want to hear about you being determined to do it. Just bloody well do it.
Exactly.
And I don't want to fund Robert Jenrick to prance around Africa trying to pretend that he can make one iota of difference to global migration patterns in other people's countries. Start with your own.
Exactly where does this strategy come from? Because what's his intention? To go to Africa and say, don't you come to our country, just don't.
I don't know.
It's illegal, don't come.
He's a very scary bloke, though. I mean, he's big and imposing.
Did you see that commanding points? You know, the commanding points enough to put him back.
It's just a junket, isn't it? Let's be honest, and a photo opportunity for him to survey a continent and try to look important.
And a headline.
The only other thing I know about him is when he was, I think he was Minister for Speed or Transport or something like that, and he got done for speeding. That's all I know. So, I mean, it's the sort of thing you shouldn't really do. Anything to do with driving, and if you're a minister, try not to get done for speeding because, you know, it's not really a very good idea. But yeah, he's one of those faceless ministers who has probably had several different portfolios and made absolutely no difference to any of them.
Didn't he get into hot water over a planning development? Was that him?
Yes,
I think
he's
he
been in
did.
hot water over planning. He was actually Secretary of State, unbelievably, which is a sort of indication of the quality of our business. I took him to task a few years ago, actually, about heat pumps that we touched on earlier. and at an event, and he said, "No, I've been assured that the technology is great, it works, it's the future." And I looked at him and said, "You don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
But this is the trouble with them. They don't know anything about the real world. They don't even seem to know the people that we know. Who, I mean, I know people that put heat pumps in, and they tell me it's an absolute
Bitterly
disaster.
regret it.
You know,
£20,000 later.
Yeah, and I mean, how do they not know people that do things like that? How are they so kind of naive about everyday life?
Because because they're so out of touch. All they're interested in is power and a few junkets and a few trips to nice hotels.
I think what we need to do is submit a written question in some months' time asking the government exactly what Robert Jenrick achieved with that visit, and you will get the square root of nothing.
And can we have a breakdown of his expenses as well?
That'd be nice. Let's see that.
But so you've got the next one, Richard.
So my next one is actually someone that I think people have heard of, which is his boss, Rishi Sunak, who, let's just remind people, makes great sort of play on the fact that he worked for Goldman Sachs, that highly respected investment bank. He worked for a big hedge fund. So apparently he understands how financial markets work. He thinks it's a good idea that we'll go back to the 1970s and introduce caps on basic foodstuffs. He wants to reintroduce 1970-style price controls.
Listen, I lived in the 70s. We didn't have any food. I mean, there was barely anything to eat.
Exactly.
I mean, it was literally the biggest shop was like a sort of Tesco Metro. That was it.
So he's actually proven himself that he is a socialist. I mean, I invented this word con-socialist, and he is just absolutely guaranteed to be one of them because, you know, the idea is that you believe in free markets and enterprise and competition, and that drives prices down. He's done the opposite. And all of the retailers, all of the big ones, the big supermarkets, they instantly came out and said, this is madness. It will literally lead to food shortages.
But it yet again falls into the category of things you know are never going to happen. It isn't going to happen. All it is designed to be is a shot across the bows at the supermarkets. Once again, designed to show that the Tories care, that they're trying to do something. It doesn't fool anybody.
But again, offering our money to people so that they could buy food. I mean, what's that all about?
Ridiculous.
You know, why do they? Everything he wants to do involves a subsidy of some kind.
If they cut taxes on energy, if they had a sensible energy policy, as opposed to windbag, windsock, KEIR Starmer's energy policy, then we would have lower prices in our supermarkets because their input costs would be lower. That's
I mean,
the
I think there is something a
competition.
bit fishy going on in the supermarkets, though, because they're very expensive. The price of things has gone through the roof. You know?
And as a result of which, there's a lot of theft.
Yeah, there's a sort of shoplifting epidemic going on. There are now places where they only put out one sort of steak to show what it looks like. But you can't actually take that one. You have to ask for another one.
Bring one
they
from
go
the
in
back.
the back and bring it out.
I love it.
Because otherwise people literally...
A bit like buying cigarettes. You have to ask for it.
But if you look at the supermarket's profit margins, they're still down at 2 or 3%. So,
but they made a lot of money during COVID, didn't they? I mean,
Yes,
they
they
were
did,
one of the
but-
few businesses that did.
They did because basically there was nowhere else you could go. I mean,
exactly.
that was it. You went there
Day
for a bit of a
out.
party down the corridors with your Motspur trolley.
I remember those ridiculous lines that people would stand sort of a metre behind one another.
Oh, God.
freezing out
And all
there as
indicated
well.
on the floor.
I remember
Absolutely.
once going into Waitrose near me in Greenwich, wearing a pair of plastic sort of rubber gloves.
You wore rubber gloves?
Yeah, because somehow, I don't know why, but somehow
That is a vision. That is a vision to behold. You with rubber gloves.
And I had to wear a
I didn't
mask,
see a
and I had
photograph.
glasses, and I couldn't see, and I'm trying to pick this cheese, and I was going, this is ridiculous. And I just took it all off. But I thought, I look like the Boston Strangler shopping. You know, it's mad. Anyway,
what COVID has done.
Rishi Sunak, it's a pretty good one. Coming up, we're going to go with Hanoi Jane. You might remember that if you're a member of the Vietnam Brigade. And also a bloke who's in charge of a Manchester United charity. He's in there as well. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're almost near the end of the show already, but we've still got plenty of places to go. And coming up, Amanda Devlin from The Sun is going to give us her next nominee. And it's a sort of an oldish actress. I'd probably get told off for that, but she is a bit ancient, isn't she?
A bit ancient. So Jane Fonda.
There you go.
Yeah, I keep wanting to say Honda.
Yes.
But, right, Fonda. I don't get a free car out of that.
Well,
do
the
I?
Fondas used to be this sort of very iconic sort of dynasty
Family,
of
yeah.
American actors, didn't there? It was Henry Fonda, Peter Fonda for Easy Rider, Jane Fonda,
and Fred.
She's
and
one.
Bridget Fonda.
So
Bridget Fonda related to them as well.
this one, Jane, she's 85. She's won 2 Oscars. She's a great actress. But I'm really not quite sure how to talk about this. What she actually said is quite confusing, so it's really hard to explain.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Should we watch the clip and
yeah,
see
let's go for
if that
Yeah,
explains
that might
it first? I think the first one is from Fox TV.
If there was no misogyny, there'd be no climate crisis. It's part of a mindset. It's the mindset that looks at a woman and says, nice.
Yeah, what is she doing with her hands there? Looking for a brain? Looking for the logic
It's the Botox that's leaking in.
To be fair,
the thing I like about that
I
clip
think
is
she
the
looks
guy
great.
is listening to her and just kind of going, I mean, why is he going, you're
Did they
talking
not challenge
absolute
her?
rubbish,
I mean,
by the
he's
way.
scared. He's scared.
Apparently, she originally said this in Cannes. She went to the film festival, of course,
Yeah.
because she's worried about climate change. So she immediately gets on a plane
Yeah.
and flies, halfway around the world so that she can tell people climate change is a big problem.
Due to racism.
Due to racism.
Yeah, and misogyny, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
So I think that's what her point is. She's basically blaming climate change on white men, sort of in particular. But she also throws in sexism and, there's all sorts.
I think there's a homophobia reference at some point, isn't there?
Has
anybody actually
misogyny,
worked out what she's talking about? What does she mean?
Not really.
No, she just puts everything back to if it wasn't for racism, then, because that's, we kind of put all of the pollution, poison, everything.
So there'd be no climate change
where people are poorer.
If there was
and-
no racism.
Yeah.
So the climate's changed for millions of years. But it's all racism's fault.
Of course, and
even though
misogyny.
the climate changed even before basically man existed.
You've got it.
Jane, I think you've got it wrong, love.
Yeah.
Shall we
Stick to the dance
Let's have a
videos.
look. She has another go on another show, which is called The Kelly Clarkson Show, Daytime America. Here we go.
You can take anything, sexism, racism, misogyny, homophobia, whatever, the war, and if you really get into it and study it and learn about it and the history of it and everything's connected. There'd be no climate crisis if it wasn't for racism.
Everything's
She's
connected.
doubling down there,
Yeah.
isn't she? I mean, this is clearly an ongoing theme.
Yes.
I feel a
it
bit
is
sorry
theme-
for Jane,
It is a
actually.
theme of the kind of the wacky American left, though, that they talk about this kind of thing. And I was just in America recently, and people are in despair at what the left has
I
become.
mean, to be fair, the
in
wacky
America.
American right is almost as bad.
It
as
is.
Some of their
Yeah,
crazy
it is.
conspiracy theories.
But the problem for the wacky American right is that they're not mostly in charge of all the cities, whereas the wacky American left are.
Yeah.
And San Francisco and Los Angeles, my son lives there, and he said, and he was a bit woke last time I saw him. Now he's gone completely the
you
other
need
way.
to move him to Florida or
No, he's
something.
gone completely the other way. He's like, it's a nightmare. There's tented cities in Hollywood. Everywhere you go in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles is now just literally for the homeless people.
Wow.
Nobody else goes there because nobody goes to work anymore. They all work from home.
Right.
And so the cities are literally being hollowed out. People are staggering about on fentanyl,
Wow.
incapable of doing anything, can't work, crystal meth.
Yeah.
It's just horrendous.
It's a complete sign of decadent,
It really is.
complacent, failing Western
Right.
society.
Yeah.
But you could argue, if you're really free market about it, you could say, at least in America, that's the benefit of competition. Because if leaders of one city screw it up so badly, like those two examples, then actually people move to well-run states like Florida.
Yeah.
They do really well, and eventually it will turn. But sometimes things have to get
bad
worse.
news if you're still living there.
It's appalling if you live there. But there's basically many people are just leaving.
Yeah.
I think it links back to what we were talking about earlier with Jane, because she is someone who is obviously privileged. She's a talented actress, and we're not taking that away from her. She's brilliant, and she looks fantastic for her age, being 85. But
Not all
talking
of us 85,
about,
of course.
but
Some of her is a bit younger than that.
Mike,
Fair
couldn't possibly
Listen,
comment.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that's the way it is.
But she is someone who's she's there preaching, and like you said,
But she's always been
flying
this
off to
controversialist.
Cannes and-
Remember the famous picture of
Is it
her?
just for attention?
This famous picture of her with the anti-aircraft gun in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because she was
Yeah.
against the war in Vietnam. So,
Right.
like all intelligent people, instead of just going to demonstrate outside the, Washington Capitol building, she decided to actually go to Vietnam and join the Viet Cong and sit there pretending to shoot down American planes. And you're kind of going, sorry?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm the only
She's
one
got
old enough to
form,
remember that.
as we
yeah,
say.
but
She's got
she's
form.
always been on that side of the fence.
I'm just a bit fed up of these kind of preaching people who actually are in a, they're in a world of their own. They don't understand.
She'll live in a sort of
and they're just telling all of us
$40 million
something.
home in Bel
Virtue
Air.
signalling hypocrites. There's
Yeah.
nothing worse.
I have
It really is.
to concur with you, Richard. There are certain standards that are decaying with society and culture, and I think one of those is growing old gracefully. And sadly, Jane needs to probably take a page out of that.
Disgracefully, I think she's going. You've got the next one, Will.
Yeah, so this is a cracker. Not sure I'm going to win it with this one, but I think it's quite a good one. And this is the very talented footballer Alessia Russo, who has won the accolade of being Woman Player of the Year in football. Yeah. And she was awarded this by the Manchester United Foundation, which is the charity for Manchester United. Yes. And the CEO, John SHIELS, decided when he was going to award this very, very nice gong, this nice...
it's like winning the Ballon
Shield,
d'Or.
Yeah, it's basically a trophy. Decided to say, I'm not going to pass it to you, Alessia, because it's a bit heavy and I'm not sure you can carry it. And it was like, ooh. And you could hear the silence in the room and the actual host turning round and saying, actually, it's not that heavy, John. And I think she can go.
You described this to me and I thought, so what? Wait till you see it.
Oh, it's
brilliant.
Have
a look at this. This is unbelievable. Yeah.
I'm not going to give this to Alex because it's so heavy. I've just been in a weight training session. Jason, you can try if you want.
I think you can take it quite happily, can't you?
Hold it.
John, you need to do a bit more weight training. It's not that heavy.
Do you want to take it? Sure.
Quick picture.
John SHIELS. I mean, I've never heard of this guy before.
But we do now.
I mean, has he been in some kind of time capsule since like 1970?
I mean, I thought she was very graceful, where she was very, very sort of dignified in the way that she reacted to
Let it go, didn't she?
I mean,
the other guy wasn't really. He was just
no. He called him out, and I liked him for calling him out. I thought it was quite right.
I wonder what goes through people's minds, don't you? Because I mean, we've all probably said things perhaps that we thought we shouldn't have said, but not normally on a stage in front of quite a big audience of people being filmed doing it, and
he could have just said, right, I'm just warning you, this is really heavy.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with it.
Right, and even that would have probably been misconstrued. If people would have said, what do you mean by that? What do you mean she
can't?
But
it would have been better than what he said.
Yeah, then, little lady, don't worry yourself. It's a little
I'll just hold it I mean... I'd have liked to see her whacking him, actually. Just knocking him out. It would have been brilliant. Get over there.
Yeah, with the trophy. With the trophy.
That would have been brilliant.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it does show us that football, even the charitable side of it, is still got a little bit of a way to go.
Yeah, I mean, bless him. He's probably gone home to watch reruns of George and Mildred,
Yeah, they all sit around going, isn't it great? Women's football's becoming really popular. And that's the people that
His first moment to fame, and he absolutely blew it.
Yeah, I wonder, actually, it's a serious question, this. Can people like him survive that? I mean, they might ask to have him removed now from the foundation.
I don't think he should.
I mean, I'm not saying he should be.
I think he just had a moment, didn't he?
I don't think he had a moment. No, he clearly, that's what he's like.
Yeah.
He's in the pub every night and go, hoo-hee. That's, unreconstructed
How's he
football
going?
man.
I think we need to hear that again.
Hang on, what's wrong with being in the pub and going, hooray?
Well... We don't do it anymore, Will.
Do we not? Okay,
not anymore. No. Anyway, listen, Plank of the Week coming up next. We'll give you the winner, plus my final nomination. It's an international again. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We are very nearly at the very exciting bit at the end when I decide who's going to win, because that's what I do now. I don't ask anybody else's opinion, because what's the point, quite frankly? I can decide all by myself.
It's your show.
But also, I'm slightly worried, because the last 2 weeks, I think I've ended up winning it. And it's not about who wins it, honestly.
It's all about taking part.
It's all about the taking part. And it's a collective effort. It's not really necessarily about who's got the best nomination. But some people look at it like that. My final nominee is the United Nations. You don't talk about them very much anymore. I don't hear people saying...
It's just irrelevant. I mean,
well, they really are.
What do they
but you would think,
do?
though, would you not think that with the problems the world has got, we keep being told there's a war in Ukraine, there's now several wars going on in Africa, which have been going on for a long time. UNHCR, the kind of the rescue hostage refugee council, are all over Africa in their white Land Rovers, and their white Toyota Land Cruisers. But they're not doing anything. They haven't done anything for years, right? And they just seem to have no point whatsoever. They've still got that big building in New York City. They've still got loads of diplomats.
These are nice jobs, I reckon.
Well, they've not only are they
jobs.
nice jobs, but when I was living in New York, I remember there was an annual kind of tally of crimes that had been committed by diplomats at the UN, which ranged from, you know, really serious kind of, you know, sexual assaults, rapes, to parking fines, to, you know, robberies, drug use, all sorts of things. And they all had diplomatic immunity.
Yeah.
Not one of them could be prosecuted for it. And it was extraordinary. I still don't even know. I mean, maybe we should ask the question how much Britain pays to have a UN envoy and to have a sort of team of people who sit in New York City doing what exactly?
Yeah.
Because every time they have a Security Council meeting, you know, the Russians veto something or Chinese veto something. And it just seems pointless to me. But anyway, I'm getting a bit off the point here because actually the reason they're in it this week is due to an event which they were sponsoring called Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is not a very nice thing to have to bring up, I know. But have a look at this. They put this out, right? Menstrual health is a human right and periods are a normal part of human biology. So far, so good. Yet 500 million people lack access to menstrual products and adequate facilities.
Oh, God.
On Sunday's Menstrual Hygiene Day, let's end the stigma around menstruation. Well, part of the stigma around it is that sometimes they don't properly gender the people who actually are in need of adequate facilities.
In other words, women and girls.
In other words, women and girls. And presumably 500 million people are 500 million women and girls.
That's exactly what they are.
Why are they erasing
So why
us?
can't they just use language the right way? What's wrong with them? Do you think people are going to be up in arms if they say women and girls?
No, I don't think they are.
Is
it attention seeking because we then end up talking about it?
I don't think the UN is sitting around in the chamber asking whether or not they can get a piece of plank of the week. To be honest, I mean, I know they haven't got much to do.
We're going to aim high.
They will be very concerned that they might be the winner. I mean, that would be a serious problem.
This
for
follows,
them.
by the way, hot on the heels of a doctor's surgery in Woodgate Valley, Birmingham, health centre there, in which people who go there, particularly those with young babies and infants, are asked to fill out a form as to what gender the baby is, including whether it's trans.
I mean, this stuff has got ridiculous.
Yeah.
I took a very elderly, very frail person to get a jab earlier last week, and they were asked if they could be pregnant.
I mean,
she's 80, in her 80s.
And then the justification for this was, oh no, we give this form to everybody, not just to new mothers. Well, that's not the answer. You shouldn't be giving it to anyone. You know.
I mean, going back to your UN thing, I think there is a big issue, obviously, in terms of the availability of menstrual products for women and girls.
Well, it's a
and I mean, and to be honest,
cause,
if they were going to try not to invite criticism by calling it people, and if they'd put women and girls, they probably would have got a lot more coverage for this actual campaign. So it's self-defeating
in a way,
isn't
it?
We're talking about something that we shouldn't be talking about. We're talking about gender again, rather than the actual issue.
Anyway, listen, I can hear the music, so it's time to present the prize of Plank of the Week. And I'm afraid there can only be one winner this week. There can only be one winner. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to give it to that well-known former television presenter, PHILLIP Schofield. And Isabel was right.
Dunk.
She picked it early.
She cheated, but there we are.
Who's lied to everybody, including his wife, his lawyer, the Daily Mail, his agent, I think. He hasn't actually lied to us yet, but maybe we'll get that next week. Thank you to everybody, Isabel, Richard, Amanda and Will. We'll see you next week for Plank of the Week. Nadine Dorry's coming next. This is Talk TV.
It's time for That Was the Woke That Was.
The topical quiz show that goes through all of the wokest stories of the week.
She has been fame hungry from the get-go.
Saturdays at 9 on Talk TV.